everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming. I see some people over here. There's front row seats available. No extra charge. So thank you everyone so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm Diana Nelson. I represent the Downs on all things community relations and public relations. I'm a resident here in Scarborough. And we really appreciate you guys coming tonight. It's really important for all the residents in town to learn about probably the most anticipated piece of the development at the Downs, which is, of course, is the town center. We've done a lot of these town hall style meetings and we've never had turnout like this. So thank you for coming. I think many of you know, I see a lot of familiar faces, that this has been something that the town of Scarborough has been working to bring to fruition for many, many years now. Since 2006, this has been something that residents have articulated that they want to see in town, and we're close to making it happen, and it is really exciting, and we can't do it alone, which is why we're here. We need public input. So tonight you're going to hear all about the project. You're going to hear from the planners who have laid it out, about the nuts and bolts of what will be included within the town center, and you'll hear from architects and designers, some of the best in the nation, who've purposefully laid out every corner of this town center to have a clear purpose and to create engagement and to create a space that people in all of Scarborough really are excited to have in their hometown. We'll also hear from some people that are way above my pay grade, financial analysts, lawyers, that talk about the fiscal benefit to the community and how that's all going to work. And we're all here to answer questions that you might have. The developers are not here tonight, and that is purposeful because they feel like their job right now is to listen. And so that is our purpose. We hope to have a lot of conversation and dialogue by the end of the evening. We're going to do a Q&A with everyone in the room. And we hope it is a really interactive process. As a point of order for people who are watching at home, we want to see and hear your questions as well. So please leave them in the chat, and we're going to synthesize all of the questions, and we'll be answering them throughout the week on social media. So we really want everyone who is here tonight to be engaged and have their voice heard on any of the topics. We're going to talk a little bit about some other things that are interconnected to the Downs project, which is improvements in traffic that are permitted and already underway in some parts of town. We're going to talk about where the community center stands, where the prospective recreation center stands, and a variety of other topics that we know are really, really important to having the Downs done properly and right. So without further ado, we will give you a first look at Scarborough's future town center.
This isn't about just the Downs, it's about the town of Scarborough.
The idea of community is why we're here.
We want people to understand the opportunity. The proposal is that the development provides the town center. That's unique.
One of the recommendations that we made as a Downs community was to bring on an advisor.
We were asked to come in and take a look at the work that's been done and think about how do we create a sense of place here when we mean something, not only to the Downs, but really to the town center. We're basing our town center design off of the town's 2006 comprehensive plan.
It's part of that good work. I don't think it's that simple.
It's designed and organized around the central green, including restaurant space and outdoor dining. It's going to have a location for a community center. Also have a recreation center.
To have a community space run by the town, I hope my kids get to take advantage of it.
The Downs, in a sense, becomes a destination.
That's exactly what we were hoping for. We try to line the edges of these public spaces, not only with high density housing when we can, but also active retail edges and community-focused pieces as well. To have those amenities be vibrant, people need to be living across the street or above the shop.
You don't want the carpets to roll up at 5 o'clock. You have the residential side of it here. You have the people that are here to support the merchants that we want to bring to town.
We need the rules to be in place to allow us to proceed with that type of development.
What can be done at this site absent any public participation. It's very boring and it's very terrible for Scarborough. The extra effort that's being expended to design a town center and go through this public process is dynamite.
To be able to go down and grab a coffee or to pick up the groceries or go for a swim in a community facility, I just see that there's a lot of value.
This is win-win for the town as a whole.
This is an opportunity to kind of create that hub, create that special place that people want to go.
The town center at the Downs is for Scarborough.
If the Downs is done right, it can be an amazing experience for everyone.
And now I will turn it over to Brian O'Connor from Cube 3, the architect and master designer for the town center.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Really appreciate you taking the time to be out here. We got involved in this project a little while ago, and the way we were introduced to it was to really come in and rethink everything that had been thought about. And so what I'm going to do tonight is walk you through a little bit of the process, a little bit of the structure that helped us create this town center idea that we're presenting. And it really is a byproduct of being here a lot and talking to the development team. And I think we really want a very healthy community interaction process. We are trying to bring best practices from around the country to what could be here, and at the same time be hyper focused on making sure that this is a place that's all about Scarborough. It's not about Asheville, North Carolina. It's not about California. This is your place. This is your town center. And so I think we've worked really hard so far to make sure that the ideas and the structure are about this place. And I think we just really want to walk you through that and hopefully explain a little bit about how we got where we are. So we're going to focus really primarily in this red circle, which is right in the middle of the plan here. And as we go in a little bit more, there are some really core uses that all need to live in harmony in here to make this feel and function like a sense of place. There are very centrally located core public assets, amenity areas, green space, things that are really all about the community. There's a mixed use component to this, which brings that active retail and brings that life. There's commercial space, which is critical not only to drawing people here and contributing to this sense of place, but also to create that activation. And then you're going to hear Dan talk about this in a little bit, but when we think about how to create a sense of place that means something as a 24-hour zone, there really needs to be a residential density that is resonating very clearly with what you're trying to achieve and what this place is going to feel like. If you overshoot, you create a problem. If you undershoot, you create a problem. And so we've worked really hard as a team to find that balance of public amenities, open space, community space, commercial, mixed use, and residential. And you'll hear Dan talk about that. And then in the light yellow, there's also commercial office space, which we also think is a really critical component. So the centerpiece of this entire plan is really the area that you're seeing here, where we zoom in even further and we say, what are these public amenities? And by public, I mean truly public, not important only to the residents, but important to the town. And so we'll zoom in on that area a little bit. And we're going to start with sort of the middle. And the center of this thing is really this town green. And so we think immediately about what do we want around that? How do we want to cluster use and cluster activity around this town green? And what we see around the country and in other planned developments, if you wrong size this space, everything goes badly after that. So we have to think very carefully about what the edges are, what the uses are, how these things work. And what we want to create is sort of a clear definition of these spaces. We want to think about how you're getting in and out. We want it to be pedestrian friendly, and we want to understand how cars and vehicles interact with that space. So if we zoom in even further, you can see that as we define the public space, we're looking at sort of, I'm not going to read any of this. We're going to really look at, sorry, I like to just talk. So what we really have is sort of the recreation center and the community center on the left-hand side of the plan. And those create direct and critical frontage to exactly what we're trying to do here. They create that public activity, that town of Scarborough direct access that really has nothing to do directly with the people that live and work here, but they should also play a role in that. We have a little retail space. We have flexible spaces. We have this really amazing central amenity piece, which anchors the whole thing. And then there's a series of lawn areas around it, which are varied in scope, scale, and size that allow activity of a lot of different types to happen, both in connection with that central amenity, in connection with the edge of the streets as a front yard, if you will, to the community space and the recreation center. And then this is just a quick view of what it looks like to come into that space. So I'm going to jump back one really quickly, and we're coming in right here between these two retail buildings. So we're entering from the Haggis Parkway edge here. And what you're seeing here is that sort of central amenity building in the distance, a residential building on the right-hand side, and a mixed-use building on the left-hand side. They're actually both mixed use. On the right-hand side, that first floor, you see active retail, you see direct access front doors onto the street. On the left side, we're very deliberately structuring these buildings so they pull back. They create outdoor plaza spaces. They create the opportunity for restaurants to start to spill out into the street and create that nighttime environment that's so important. And then this is a view, if we walk up a little further, we're right at that main intersection now, and we're sort of looking into the space in the distance. Those pitched roofs are actually the community center, and you can see we're looking across the green, but here we have this sort of really critical view of that amenity space that's right in the middle of the town green. Right now, this is designed as a two-story amenity space, and we think it could be, you know, we're talking about a wide variety of uses, but this is an active, engaged public space, and it has, you know, whether it's restaurant or sort of a brewery or whatever it ends up being, it's a very sort of iconic piece in the middle. And in some ways, it's kind of referential structurally and thoughtfully to the, you know, the grandstands that used to be here. We want to create a little bit of an homage to that. And so there's exposed structure, there's very tall ceiling spaces, and it really becomes a beautiful centerpiece. What you see on the right-hand side is, again, a restaurant on the front corner of one of those buildings spilling out and creating that outdoor plaza space, some shopping on the left. And then this is a quick view of what that might look like at night. When we do this planning work, we're not working in 2 dimensions. We're constantly building everything in 3 dimensions. We're looking at it during the day. We're looking at it at night. We're thinking about the seasonality of it. These spaces have to not work in June alone. They have to work in December. They have to work in November. So when we think about this public amenity space in the middle, we think about the flexible space that could be a roller rink in the summer. It could be a skating rink in the winter. It has a high ceiling that not only is about the grandstands at some level, but it's also about protecting you from the sun, from the rain. So these spaces become more 3 and 4 season usable and more attractive as destination locations. So these are some of the things that we think about when we talk about how do we define this public character. And again, these are really critical components, as important as the planning. And we really think about, where are you going to sit? You know, how are you going to use the lawn? How do the building edges interact with these public spaces? These are all really the core planning principles that go into laying out how these buildings work and how they feel on the site. Here's a quick view in aerial form back down across the town green, and you can start to see some of these lawn areas. You can see this is set up right now as a little bit of a hockey rink or roller rink in the middle. Again, it's a flexible space, high ceilings, lawn areas that directly connect to hardscape areas. We want to think about real inclusivity here. This is not a space that's only lawn. You know, this is where ADA accessibility comes into play. We want to bring the entire diversity of the town of Scarborough to play here and to interact here. So thinking about how all these uses come together is really critical. So from a planning standpoint, these are sort of some quick strategic diagrams to help you guys understand the thought process. That edge that I talked about with the rec center is really important, not only in the way that it connects to that public green, but also in the way that it supports the residential uses that are going to be on the site. We want these residences and the people that live here to be using the rec center. We want them to be using the community center. We want really clear, clean path of travel for pedestrians through this site. So it's not a car-focused environment. It's one that we fully recognize cars will inhabit. And so all of the streets in this downtown area, you can see they're sort of paved with a slightly different tone. We're thinking about the texture and materiality of those streets. We're going to have parallel parking, benches on the streets, lighting. These are really important pedestrian spaces, but cars need to cohabitate with the people. So we really start thinking about how that works. We also really wanted to think about the connections that you see in blue They go down to the south here. They're going past the office down to the grocery and some of the other uses you saw in the master plan earlier. And then they go up to the left over to the Innovation Center. Another key piece of this town center is to make sure it's inclusive not only to the town of Scarborough, but it looks at the great work that's been done here in the Innovation Center and the other future development areas here and brings them together so that people who work here can walk and take their bike down past the rec center, past the community center, along the edge of the green, use the grocery store, use the retail, and again, feed that activity in a 24-hour cycle. And here's a quick view down right here. We're standing in front of the rec center. The community center is off on our right. You can just see the very edge of that. And this is that path that we were talking about in blue there. So coming from the Innovation Center, you have that amenity building on the left. You have one of the public green lawn areas right there on the left as well. And you would go down in between those buildings to get to the grocery store. So we also think this is the grocery store. So now we've moved a little bit further south. And again, here the idea is to make sure the grocery store doesn't feel like a traditional suburban grocery store that's in the middle of a giant parking lot. We have to think very hard about the pedestrian connections. We want you to be able to walk from this main street edge where we have all this exciting mixed use activity. We want you to be able to walk down on a pedestrian path, not across a giant parking lot, to go to the grocery store, use their grab and go. Things like this change the way grocery stores respond to a community and to where they are. If they have people walking in, they're going to have more grab and go. They're going to have more prepared foods. They're going to have more interesting offerings. And so planning and thinking about how you get to the office, how you get to the grocery store, and how it's not a pure Carly-based environment is really critical to the way we think about the planning here. And then this is a quick view on that Main Street corridor, sort of looking down the public space, and that two-story public amenity is right in the center. Off to the right-hand side, we see this active retail edge. You can see we're planning for really appropriately wide sort of plaza pedestrian circulation areas, parallel parked cars, so it's easy to get in and out of these retail areas. A little bit of the lawn space on the left. And here you can actually see through the glass into the pool area. We may want a little film on that at some point, but the idea is to really communicate that these are very active uses. These are not blank facades. We want this rec area and community center to be a contributing part of what makes this a great place to be. And here's another quick view, aerial view, sort of looking down on that public green. And you can see that the key to this is also diversity of architecture and diversity of design, and thinking about how to make a place that feels exciting to be in, exciting to live in, and exciting to interact with. This is the community center. We think this town green, we want it to feel like a town green. And part of that is providing a diverse range of architecture around you. So while you're in these spaces, you feel like, you know where you are. You feel like the edges are defined. You have orientation. You know where the public amenities are. You know where the retail is. And it creates really, really rich and engaging spaces. So Dan's going to talk a little bit more about housing. I probably talked too long. I apologize, and looking forward to talking with more questions.
Thanks, Brian. Dan Bacon, the master planner on the project. And, every time Brian does one of these presentations, and we get to look at this plan all the time, and we show the plan to people, everybody I talk to gets so excited about the work that Brian's done in terms of putting this plan together. And as we introduce this plan to new businesses, the list keeps getting longer and longer. So John Rizzo's here, our broker on the project, and he's beginning to show the concept to prospective businesses. And I think, John, at this point, we might have like 40 to 60 different businesses, ranging from a few sought after brew pubs, some restaurants, a variety of sports and recreation end users that all want to be in the center. But I think they ask sort of the same two questions. One is there going to be housing? Is there going to be people here? Is it going to be mixed use? Like, what's the vitality of this place? Because it is off the beaten track. And the second thing they ask is, when is it going to start? So I wanted to talk a bit about housing, because that's really the foundation for this town center. In working with Brian's team, housing is critical to really kind of drive the project and be an anchor to this mixed use project for a variety of reasons. One, it generates customer activity 24 hours a day. It generates foot traffic. It also enables retailers to be comfortable with this town center location off of the town's main corridors. This exciting design, this unique kind of layout can't happen right on Route 1. Obviously, there's great design opportunities with the Downs, but one of the major challenges for retailers to locate here initially is it's off the beaten path. It's not visible. So that's a real key piece, and a piece that housing can solve. If there's housing early on, it'll give those retailers confidence in locating in the project. Obviously, also housing, it kind of generates that 24-hour activity. It also differentiates the project from your traditional shopping center. And Brian did a great job of introducing and presenting how this is really superior to a typical shopping center that doesn't rely on housing. Another element in terms of the town's goals is housing, particularly right now, especially in a mixed use environment with a wide range of price points. Condos, apartments, detached housing really can solve some of the towns and also the region's challenges around affordability. It's a huge issue right now, and an issue that we want to solve through this project. And not last but not least, having a clear path on a certain amount of housing is really the financing mechanism to get the town center started. So it can pay for the infrastructure, it can pay for the amenities, and it can pay for the mixed use buildings. Mixed use buildings, by their nature, have commercial. Brian showed those right along the main street, only on the first floor. There would be housing upstairs. So it's the financing to proceed with that type of development within the town center. And with the type of housing planned in the town center, these aren't housing types that have a lot of school children. So it's really, this type of housing is similar to office development in terms of a net positive impact for the community. So after Brian's great introduction of the town center design, you saw a lot of buildings, and you saw a lot of cars, and you're probably like, well, that sounds cool, but what about traffic? You know, traffic is always a concern and an increasing concern for the community. And it's actually something we've been working on for the last 3 years. So we aren't taking traffic lightly. This project's generating traffic. A lot of other developments in the past clearly have generated traffic and not mitigated their impacts. They haven't addressed the traffic issue. The Downs project is. So the last 3 years we spent getting fully permitted through Maine DOT in the town for the build out that you're seeing. So we already have permits in place with both agencies to execute this town center. And we're actually, as part of the requirements of our permits, is to address our impacts, but also address long overdue traffic improvements that other developments have not addressed. So a lot of projects have been approved in town, paid a fee, and actually haven't made physical improvements. So this project, given our permitting and work with the town and DOT, is addressing those impacts, both of past development, but our development. And it's a significant improvement package. This presentation tonight's not about getting into all the details of the improvements, but suffice to say, all the major corridors in town are going to see relief, are going to see improvements over the next 3 years, starting this year through our permitting. It totals 37 intersections, both in Scarborough, but also South Portland and Gorham. And it totals currently $14 million of improvements, with the cost of construction that's likely to increase to 15 or 16. And this isn't through local taxpayer funding. So you see a graph at the bottom, that's in millions. And that's the responsibility of making these improvements. So the Downs carries the majority of that burden at over $8 million worth of improvements. That money, that private investment, is being matched by May DOT with an additional $3 million. And then impact fees collected by other development in the past who didn't have to make improvements make up the balance to get to about $14 million. This is the biggest public-private partnership between DOT and a development project, I believe, in the state. And it's really the culmination. These improvements starting this year and proceeding through 25 are a culmination of the town's plans and studies since close to 20 years ago or over 20 years ago. Actually, in fact, 30 years ago. The Payne Road District area has been collecting money since 1990 to make improvements. Many of those improvements haven't been made. We're going to be making those in the next 3 years. The town studied transportation issues back in 2004 and established some improvement plans and some fees. We're now making those improvements using those impact fees, but mostly using town center revenue and Downs financing to make those improvements. So this is executing longstanding plans that the town has had, and also is going to be making longstanding improvements to the congestion. This is a huge win, and it's rare to see. Most communities pay for this stuff publicly through either local taxpayer dollars or wait for DOT to fund such improvements on their own. To give you more details, and I'm not going to bore you with those details this evening, we've actually worked with the town on a website, and the link is here. We can email that around if you signed in. That explains the details of these improvements by year. So you really can kind of understand those and see what corridors are going to get relief. Route 1, Payne Road, all the way out to North Scarborough, all are going to get relief through these improvements. And if you click on the website, you can go to each area and understand what those look like. Another key piece that Brian referred to is this community center. And we're really excited about providing the opportunity for a community center within the Downs. Another kind of long-standing town desire dating back 10 or 20 years is a community center for the citizens of Scarborough, potentially a pool, among many other things that could be programmed by all of you here as well as the town in terms of what goes into a community center. Brian did a great job of kind of articulating how prominent a location we've put the community center in within the town center, right across from the green, right in the thick of things. So you can go to the community center once a day, once a week, and then do other things and enjoy the environment of the town center. So we've been programming and reserving a 3-acre site for this community center. This location is actually the geographic center of the entire community of Scarborough. So it really provides the most central location and the easiest access for everybody in the community to get to the community center site, which is one of the reasons we think it makes sense in this location. Programming is really up to you, up to community services, up to the town council and the voters in terms of what goes in the community center, as well as the architecture. We think this is a cool design, but it certainly could look different. But we think the location could really be an asset to everyone in the community. The other asset is through the tax revenue of the Downs project, through the TIF that exists and applies to the Downs project. There's also a great revenue source for actually constructing the community center and paying for its operating costs. And that's something that we'll touch on in a few minutes. School needs. This is another thing that often comes up. People think about the amount of activity, development in Scarborough, residential development, particularly single family homes. And obviously school needs comes to mind, and school overcrowding or school facility improvements. Right now, the school department has a committee that's working on looking at building a consolidated primary school. And that process is ongoing. The Downs project is committed to reserving land. As the school department goes through that process, it could be that there needs to be space within the Downs project to accommodate a school facility or to accommodate existing fields or some other use that's currently on land that may make sense for a consolidated primary school. So the Downs is certainly offering to continue to work with the town on solving these issues and potentially a real estate solution in terms of school needs and school improvements in the future. Diana at the beginning mentioned that the town center concept has been kind of rumbling around town for quite a while. And this slide kind of walks you through really the chronology, both of the Scarborough Downs site, but also the town's decisions on kind of moving forward with a town center or vision and then decisions on a town center. Back in 2003, the real goal for the former Scarborough Downs owners was to establish a casino. It went to the voters. Many of you may have weighed in on that back in 2003. That was rejected. The former owners also sought a casino in 2008, which wasn't approved. And then in 2014, as recently as 2014, there was a state bill that would have enabled a casino on the site. That was the old vision for Scarborough Downs. Soon after 2003, the competing vision by the town in the town's comprehensive plan of 2006 was that Scarborough Downs could offer a town center to the community that it didn't have. In 2012, the town council at the time approved a new zone, specifically allowing for and encouraging a town center. Then the current owners acquired the Downs in 2018, and that initiative progressed even further with the town doing a revitalization plan to identify, okay, what's a downtown or a town center really look like? What's it made up of? Then as recently as last year, some of the committee members are here. A committee was formed specifically to identify, okay, what should be in the downtown or town center? What are the right ingredients? What's the right look and feel? And that work occurred throughout 2001. Report was issued in the fall. And in the fall, we handed that report to Brian and the rest of our team really to get to work and put together what you saw him present earlier. And we've taken cues directly from them, that committee's report and direction, really to come to where we are today in terms of the planning process. And with the right kind of allowances through the growth management ordinance, we can progress this further. And by a year from now, we'd be under construction with the town center. So this is really where the town started in terms of vision for a town center and where we are today. The thing, of course, that comes to mind after traffic and schools and community center is cost. And who's paying for all this and how is that all going to work? Really, there's two ways to deliver kind of significant public improvements and amenities. There's really the standard way, the typical way, and that's through public funding. That's public funding that's financed by all the taxpayers. Those investments are made and those investments are paid off through debt service by the taxpayers. That risk is on the town. That model's been used by Scarborough. That model's been used by many, many municipalities. It's the Higas Parkway model. The Higas Parkway was an economic development area. It needed infrastructure. It needed water, sewer, three-phase power. The town made all those investments some 20 years ago, and the town has slowly been paying off that debt, and slowly development's been occurring to help pay off that debt. The other way, sort of the town center way or the Downs way, is private investment finances these public amenities, these public improvements. We just talked about it with traffic improvements and transportation improvements. That's largely private funding. In this case, the private developer is making the investments, is servicing the debt, and is carrying the risk. That's the Downs model. And all the town's policies, the zoning, the credit enhancement agreement that we have with the town, our approvals, many of our requirements and ordinances, the comprehensive plan as well, are directing this project in the town center to be the private investment model. The one ordinance that is standing in the way of that is the growth management ordinance. Right now, the growth management ordinance without an exemption isn't enabling additional private investment. So that's why we're talking about this component, because development activity needs to be able to occur to make the private investment to then deliver the public amenities. So before I continue, I'm going to have Alyssa and Jim kind of jump up quickly to talk about the TIF district and how it relates to the current initiative.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening. I'm Alyssa Tibbetts. I'm an attorney who's worked for the Downs team on this project for several years now. I'll let Jim introduce himself.
Yeah, and I'm Jim Demesis, and I've also been working on this for, about 3.5 years now.
So Jim and I have the most enviable slate of the evening to really spice things up and talk about TIF districts. And Dan reminded us on many occasions to keep this high level, and it was almost as though he thought we were not capable, an attorney and an economist, to keep things high level. But we're here to prove him wrong. So I think we can do this. We only have 3 slides. It will be high level, I assure you. And this is, I should say, from a personal perspective, and I think I can speak for Jim, a really exciting opportunity. I've worked on many TIF districts and projects throughout the state of Maine, as has Jim, including Rock Row, Route 1 in Falmouth, up to Rangeley, throughout the state. This is particularly unique for us because we are both residents of Scarborough. So it's a really great opportunity for us to be part of a project that is also something we're extremely excited about on a personal level. So it's a great intersection of work and life for the two of us. What we want to share with you in the context of what you've seen this evening is the compounding effect that a TIF district can have with a development like this. There are obviously substantial benefits to the project, as you've seen, in terms of what it can bring to the community. But there is an additional benefit with respect to the fact that all of this value that's being created and tax revenue that's being generated as a result of that value in a TIF district provides significant opportunities within the town to use that tax revenue on a local level and to avoid what we call tax shifts, or in other words, increases to county taxes as a result of that new value, the loss of state revenue sharing as a result of that increased new value, and the loss of state aid to education as a result of that increased new value. Those are the primary benefits of a TIF district. And that enables a municipality like the town of Scarborough, by adopting a TIF district, to keep all of that tax revenue local and to use that tax revenue on public projects, to fund a credit enhancement agreement with the Downs team, and to do things like fund a community center or public safety improvements or traffic improvements or other infrastructure or economic development activities. There are a host of projects that are authorized under the statute and the town's development program. So it's a significant opportunity for a municipality. And in particular, we thought it was, I'll let Jim, I will not steal his thunder here with numbers. I'll only share a couple of them. I'll let him do the rest. In particular, it's really, I think, underscores the value of this when you look at what the town has projected in terms of capturing all of the new value and tax revenue in this TIF district. That represents 57.7% of the property taxes that would otherwise be impacted by what I just described in terms of these tax shifts. The benefit of the TIF district is that that doesn't occur. That revenue stays local. It allows the town to fund projects locally without having to then increase the tax burden on all other taxpayers in the municipality. And that's a significant benefit in terms of a TIF district for locally. So the downtown TIF district, I'll just highlight a couple key facts and then I'll let Jim sort of talk about the projections. The Downs is located in what the town has designated as the downtown TIF district. That was established in 2018. It consists of 955 acres, which represents about 1.4% of the total town acreage. And the Downs project site consists of or comprises more than half of that district at 510 acres. So it is not only a huge geographical area within the TIF district, it is currently one of the primary value generators within the TIF district in terms of tax revenue that can be sheltered and used within the TIF district. And I'll turn that over to Jim.
Great. Yeah, so one of the things I want to stress is that you may have heard about TIF in other communities or in the news, and it's a tool, right? And not all TIFs are equal.
Like, in other words, whether they're good or how productive they can be for taxpayers versus business, all comes down to policy and working with a public-private partnership. In this particular case, when it's done well, it involves having a really good master plan for the design that we've heard earlier, but also a fiscal master plan. So in other words, knowing what the result is going to be over time, early on and over the life of the district in terms of the taxpayers. And a lot went into that from both the downside, but also working with the town and working with their numbers to make sure that the net effect, the overall effect to taxpayers was positive, that this was not going to therefore require taxpayer funding for Downs benefits. So let's look a little bit more at that in detail. And I'll jump to that one, and that'll be the last set of numbers that I do. But I really want to point that out, that the analysis was done not only on what the revenues are going to be generated, but what's the cost to serve, how much in terms of public safety, public works, and those kinds of things, and the projections, working with SEDCO, working with the town departments. And the town did their own analysis, and we were working with their numbers as well. And then they had it verified by an independent consultant that was hired by the town to examine the Downs numbers. So this isn't just me and Alyssa up here telling you what the Downs numbers are and what we came up with for our client. These are numbers that were verified by the town using town information. It'll generate a significant net positive because of the master planning, the fact that it's mixed use development, it's not all residential, not all one kind of development. And it's also because of the sheltering effect. In other words, if you don't do that TIF district, you're just going to send the money to other communities through the formulas that Alyssa mentioned. And so you're going to, by doing that, you're going to be able to pay for the kinds of things like the traffic improvements and the other amenities through that sheltering effect. So over the next 26 years, the Downs project alone will generate over $360 million in tax revenue. That's new revenue coming into the town. Without the district, you would retain less than half of that. So in other words, it's a really big difference whether you TIF it or whether you do not TIF it. And then in sum, by doing that, you can fund different projects like the traffic without having a net negative impact on the taxpayers. In fact, you end up with a positive impact. And the only thing that I want to stress in conclusion is this is therefore, it is not another tax. It's not a tax district where people who own property within the Downs are going to be paying a different tax, or whether people outside of the Downs are going to be paying an additional tax to support the infrastructure. It's all part of your regular tax base and your tax assessment and your tax rate.
I think that's all anyone wants to hear about property tax. So we'll turn it back to Dan. Thank you. We will stick around if there are any specific questions. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Just a few more slides, so bear with us. Just to follow on their kind of geekiness about taxes, I wanted to be a little geeky about planning and touch on smart growth. So the town has a growth management ordinance, but explaining what smart growth is kind of a key piece as it connects to the town's growth management ordinance. So as a planner geek, smart growth 101 or smart growth is growing sort of responsibly, in terms of where a town grows, growing responsibly, not only in terms of land use, kind of combating sprawl and growing in a centralized location per the town's comprehensive plan, but also growing fiscally responsibly, which Jim and Alyssa touched on. And the connection we're trying to make here is the town has a growth management ordinance, but it's not necessarily connecting the dots in terms of being smart growth as it relates to this project. The mixed-use town center, or a mixed-use town center in any community, is really the highest standard of smart growth. It's having both commercial and residential within the same center, so it's walkable, so you can do things without hopping in your car. It's responsible in terms of revenue and cost to serve, as Jim mentioned. It's also responsible in terms of focusing growth in locations served by infrastructure to lessen growth impacts in the outlying areas. And that really ties to, I think, what the town often feels is sort of growth everywhere. We're trying to help the town focus growth so that the identity of other villages of town, other neighborhoods of town remain, and new development, new identity, new characters created at the Downs in a centralized location that everybody can benefit from. To have smart growth, obviously we touched on we need to have housing within the town center to kind of activate the smart growth and to drive the private investment. And with the GMO exemption, it sounds like an exemption, or it sounds like an allowance to do something that shouldn't be allowed. It's actually smart growth. It's actually allowing the town's comprehensive plan to proceed as intended, and to direct growth in the right locations into lessen growth in other areas. And it's directly related to activating all those private investments for the public good that we mentioned earlier. So we need the ability to have kind of a smart growth system through the growth management ordinance exemption to deliver everything we've talked about this evening. So to conclude, a few more numbers. The town's been growing pretty consistently since 1940 and sort of on cadence since 1960. So the town is, since 1960, every 20 years has been adding 5,000 to 5,500 residents as a matter of course. Over the next, so in 2020, the census data indicated there's about 22,000 residents in Scarborough. The town's going to add another 5,000 or 5,500 in the next 20 years, based on this growth rate, based on the town zoning, based on the rules that are in place, et cetera. So this exemption that we're seeking through the GMO is not going to change that growth rate to the community. It's going to direct where half or a little bit more of that growth occurs. The exemption that's being requested by the Downs is about 1,000 units, or the need for housing to execute the town center, I should say, is about 1,000 units within the town center and the immediate 5-minute walk, which is entirely consistent with the town's master plan and has been from the start. It's kind of when that growth occurs and where that growth occurs, both within the project, but also within the community. And it's in part enabling the housing development to occur a little bit faster than it otherwise would, so that we can deliver these public amenities more immediately, get the investment more immediately, so that we can fix the traffic improvements, we can deliver the central square, we can deliver land for a community center, and we can generate the tax revenue that benefits the community in other ways, to be used by the community in other ways. So we haven't talked about kind of nuts and bolts about the GMO tonight, because we wanted it really to be more about the town center, the vision, get your feedback on it, but also enable you to kind of understand all the things that also have to fall into place to deliver the town center. And the need for kind of that missing ordinance and the exemption within it to kind of sync up with the rest of the town's policies and vision to kind of execute this town center. So I think with that, I think we've been before you for, I think, longer than our allotted half hour. And at this point, we really want to kind of hear from you all folks around, what do you think? What are your questions? What haven't we answered, so that we can answer those questions and kind of move the process forward. We've been working with the council for a number of months on this GMO exemption. We want to kind of wrap it up and come to some conclusions in the next 45 days, I would say, 30 to 60 days. And we thought tonight was important to kind of present the entire community around what the town center can look like, what kind of comes along with it, and what are your reactions to it. So with that, I'm going to stop and I think turn it to you, Diana, or just open it up? I think we'll open it up.
So tonight we talked a lot about traffic issues and accessibility, and therefore vehicular traffic, which is going to be sort of a gating factor as to how many people can use this resource at one time if we're just using vehicles. What's the plan for a mass transit assistance? And also, will the parking always be free? It will always be unreserved. You know, I wouldn't want to go to a building and say these 500 spaces are reserved for WebEx or whatever, you know.
The transportation or the bus service question's easier than the second one, but I'll start with that. So we're not focused only on traffic improvements. That's what kind of needs the most immediate relief is some traffic improvements. But we've actually been working really closely with the town and the regional, all the transit agencies in the region on a transit plan for the Downs, which actually can activate transit really between Portland and Saco. Right now, there's a bus line that goes up and down Route 1. It has, I would say, a limited schedule, and it has kind of limited ridership. And our goal is to work with the town to add additional bus services to kind of hit the Downs, but also other key areas like Oak Hill, like other newer projects or larger neighborhoods along Route 1 to serve this whole area of Scarborough. So those plans are in place. We need a little bit more of a critical mass in terms of people and riders to start to make it economical for the providers, but that's our intention, is to proceed with public transit. We're also doing a lot of new sidewalk improvements to connect to to Oak Hill, to the school campus, to neighborhoods around the project. So it's not just a walkable Downs, it's a walkable area of the community. So that's a key piece as well.
Just to follow on that, like if you go to Portland right now, all the things that used to be parking lots are now run by a third party. They charge money and they boot your car and do all kinds of things. Can we avoid that? That kind of, as citizens.
We're a ways off, yeah. Oh, sure. So the question is sort of paid parking or third-party kind of parking management, if you will. I think we're a ways off from having those type of challenges in the town center. We're designing what Brian presented to kind of meet the town ordinances in terms of parking, have shared parking where it makes sense, have a lot of on-street parking, but we want to avoid having deterring people from coming into the town center. We want to make parking kind of usable, not over park, but not under park. Let's start here.
As a current resident of the Downs, I'm really excited to see the plans. It's a great presentation. It gives a nice sense of what this community can really be. I have two questions. I certainly hear an ask for support, but I don't know if it's an ask for action. So what's the process around changing the GMO with the town? And then secondly, because it pertains to now and traffic flow, what are the general thoughts or guidelines that you're thinking of as far as controlling traffic through the neighborhood, considering rotaries at certain intersections? We all know that the swim meet's going to let out, or the dance class is going to be, so there's going to be some high peak traffic periods, and then currently right now the Scarborough Downs Road is almost a double yellow line at times, and that's a lot of traffic feeding through there. So are there speed mitigation measures?
Yeah.
In place?
So I have to repeat the question for the folks on Zoom. So the first question is process. What's the GMO process? Second question is, okay, how are we handling kind of travel speed through the project and slowing people down, and what's kind of the future hold in that regard? So we have an application in front of the town council for an exemption for a specific area within the project, the town center and the surrounding area. And we've been working with the council on different ways to grant that exemption. They approved a resolution of sorts, I would say a month ago, 3 weeks ago, with sort of a directive to further negotiate those details. So we're in that process and working with them, and hopefully the next, 15 to 60 days to come to an exemption that enables the town center to move forward, really, in terms of the right metrics, and also a reasonable assurances that we deliver the public amenities. We're not here to just put up homes. We're here to deliver this plan and to have it be a town center for Scarborough. So the next month and a half is kind of critical for the project, so we can then kind of proceed with design and start construction, hopefully prior to a year from now, early 23. In terms of design of the roadways and slowing people down, Brian and I have been actually talking about that, and specifically as you come into and out of the town center, what are the right kind of pavement treatments? What is the right road width? What are the right kind of bump outs, on-street parking, all those little details so that the road is uncomfortable to speed on and is comfortable for pedestrians, is comfortable for people walking in the project, biking in the project, not driving in the project. So there are a number of little things that we've talked about. We have more work to do. We need to kind of get through the first question you had before we dig into the details of that. But it's very much on our mind in terms of how we calm speed and have the community be safe and comfortable and not for cars. Sir.
I'm curious what you see as when things get started, and more specifically, is there kind of a vision on like phase 1, 2, 3, or ABC, whatever you call it? And I'm more particular interested in where the green space is in the whole. Me personally, I'd love to see the green spaces kind of where it builds from, or is there a vision like this? The commercial part is it's going to start there and flow to other areas, or is there a vision on where it starts and
there is, yeah, there is. There. We're starting to talk about a phasing plan, and on this screen, to the right is south towards Route 1, to the left is towards Payne Road, and then to the bottom of the screen is Higas Parkway. So we were actually recently approved just last week to build a leg of road coming in from Higas Parkway. So the bottom of the screen, and we're going to start that construction because we don't need the town center approval to begin that. That's outside the town center. We're starting that construction May or June of this year. So that'll have pavement on it before the end of the year. We have interest by one of those sites by a brewery that we hope to be one of the first kind of exciting end users as in the gateway kind of into the town center. So that'll happen first. And then the next piece, the first town center piece, to your point, is to make that road connection. So it's going to be called Market Street coming from Higas Parkway. Market Street will be built, come to the intersection where there's central green, and then build the Downs Road back towards Route 1. And there'll be residential, the orange shapes. This is residential. This is actually an affordable project that we're interested in doing. The potential partners are good at Siemens. They can speak to that if they want to. This is a mixed-use building. That's the central amenity, the pavilion. We anticipate all of that being the first phase of the town center. So some residential to create activity, to finance the infrastructure, an affordable project to deliver on that commitment that we have, and to do the first type of project in the state of Maine. It's an affordable project that provides affordable housing to the disabled. So to your point about accessibility and road safety, that's key in our design effort. Our first mixed-use building would be on the corner, hopefully a brew pub, some other amenities on the first floor, residential upstairs. And then we want to start construction of that central green early on so that we have activity, we have that common gathering place, kind of the heart and soul of the project. So that's really the first phase. And depending on the success of that, we'll quickly move into additional kind of mixed-use buildings, additional residential. There's the grocery store that Brian mentioned. You know, if they move forward quickly, then that can activate more. But at a minimum, that first phase is that road connection and that good mix of commercial, affordable housing and some initial multifamily housing. Starting in 2023. Here and then there. Yeah. Yeah.
And also the time frame, best case for the entire thing. So you post start to 23.
So bicycle accessibility, kind of bike facilities is the question, and then timing overall for the town center. Yep. So in terms of bikes, so far, the road's been designed with bike lanes, but we've been supplementing that with multi-use paths. So the first multi-use path is already installed. It starts in the residential phase in front of the gables. And right now it comes up and then it dead ends because the road ends. That's going to come all the way into the town center. That's an 8-foot wide path that people can ride on if you're not comfortable riding in the road. We're going to be building the same type of path on Market Street all the way out to Higas Parkway. So there'll be a loop through the phase that I just explained for bike use. That's just in the first phase. Future phases is we're going to be expanding bike multi-use paths all the way up to Innovation District and through the entire town center and the future neighborhoods that are off the screen. So we're starting that, and we're kind of, with every phase, we're going to expand those multi-use paths. In terms of overall town center timing, we're starting construction in 23. Should we be able to proceed, with the current plan? And we anticipate most of what you see on the screen. This is, a 5-year build out, 5, 4, 6, 5, 7, that type of time frame. It's really based on kind of market demand in terms of enough housing to attract enough commercial development, who wants to locate here, the general economy. But our anticipation is to continue to phase, to deliver on the town center, deliver on the public amenities. And we expect it to be kind of in that 5-year time frame. You got a question, sir?
Yes. Could you show us on the screen where the grandstand down front is? Is that possible?
Sure. I'm going to go off mic so people at home can't see, or can't hear me. Clubhouse is right here. Grandstand is kind of right here. Right hand is out in that vicinity. So to kind of orient you, if you drove through the project down towards Route 1, following the current Downs Road alignment is roughly where it is on this plan. It might move around 20 or 30 feet left or right, but it's roughly where it is on this plan. And if you're driving to Route 1, before you get to the grandstand, that big central square, that green, will be just on your left if you're driving south. The community center, as shown here, would be also on your left, just as you kind of come out of the woods before it opens up and there's parking and fields to orient you. If you looked right, there's actually a clearing's already happened for the Market Street road construction. And you'll see that the beginning of that clearing, that's where that road alignment would come in from Higas Parkway. Sir.
What is the actual walking distance from the high school, Wentworth, middle school to proposed community center?
That's a good question. The walking distance gives me time to think up an answer. The walking distance from the town center to the high school, the municipal campus, is the question.
All the school buildings.
The school buildings. Yep. So as the crow flies, which isn't the walking distance, I think it's no more than a mile to say the middle school. It's going to be further to like town hall. I think walking distance is certainly more because you're going to be going out to Sawyer Road and go down Sawyer Road and then enter by Memorial Park. That's the sidewalk system now. In the future, I know that the town and the schools have been doing campus planning, figuring out, if schools are added, things, improvements are made. I think there can be a more direct connection from the middle school. The ball fields right behind the middle school are really across Sawyer Road from the Downs. So that's a very close potential connection. It's just not a sidewalk connection today. But after this meeting, we can actually get out the maps and give you a specific distance, and we can email that around to everybody because I want to, get the right distance. But without improvements to the middle school it's obviously going to be longer than it is today.
I've worked for Cape Elizabeth Community Services for over 15 years, and I've lived in this town for over 20 years. And the community center, et cetera, has been proposed for the entire time I've lived here. But what has made the Cape Elizabeth Community Center functional is that it is in walking distance of the majority of their schools, and that not having to bus students from the schools to a facility in order for it, whether it be for swim practice for the teams, for club, for phys ed classes.
Yeah.
That's
Other questions? Yeah, Rick.
Thanks for putting this on tonight. Curious as to what the Downs is envisioning in terms of, this is a very large footprint, and it probably carries a very large carbon footprint as well. So is there any sort of planning in terms of the sustainability and resiliency of this new built environment? What are some of the things that we as the town can start looking forward in some of the construction? Will it be solar on these buildings? Will there be a way to maybe do geo sidewalks where now you can deal with the icing issue because you're going to have lots of sidewalks? You got any sense of the carbon footprint that's going to happen here, and how can we mitigate it to the best of our abilities?
Sure. I mean, just the nature of the project and being mixed use and being dense and being walkable is sustainable. I mean, that's the principle of this land use pattern. You know, you can come here and instead of driving to the grocery store and then driving to the bank and then driving to the school and then driving home, like you can do a variety of things, including live here, recreate here, and work here and shop here without hopping in your car. So in terms of the layout of the project, for a suburban community, it's the most sustainable in terms of actual development pattern. In terms of kind of the details of what you're talking about, like what are energy improvements, I think one of the things that we want to work with the town on is, you know, we're doing a variety of parking lots. We're doing on-street parking. We want to kind of lay it out for the future. You know, a lot of communities, particularly in other states and other countries, you know, have car chargers like you would have parking meters, you know, so really kind of designing the town center to be ready for the new form of transportation in terms of, or the new form of energy for auto transportation. I think there's great opportunities for that. And we talked about transit, and that's a key component as well. You need a walkable center to get people out of their cars and to get people riding transit. In terms of solar, I mean, so far in the Innovation District, and we're in a building right now, Jamie's heavily invested, he's still here, he was over there. He can educate us on the approach to kind of solar in terms of this facility. And there are a number of other Innovation District end users that are doing solar, including mainly Tubbs. I know IDEX is. So that'll be kind of a site-by-site situation. But we have great kind of model here already in place. And certainly open to ideas around other energy, like geothermal, like you mentioned, Rick. I mean, we want to kind of learn from the best in terms of what to integrate here. I know we've talked to the sports complex, not the community center, but the sports complex that we're showing, haven't talked a whole lot about, right next to the community center that has some co-location potential. To the other gentleman's comment, they rely heavily on kind of alternative energy and also kind of shared energy sources between kind of hockey and swimming and the different heat and cooling needs. So I'm not an expert on this stuff. I know you are, but I think we're open to additional ideas on how to make this not only a sustainable pattern, but sustainable kind of buildings and system. Kevin.
Hi. We always hear traffic, returning into Massachusetts. And, you know, at the same time, have you taken into account, or is it being taken into account in your traffic impact studies, all the work that the Maine Turnpike Authority is planning? The expansion, the changes down at exit 36 and the rebuilding of Route 112, and the Gorham commuter corridor that's going to be upon us before not too long.
Right.
Has that been taken into account in your traffic impact studies?
Yeah, it certainly has. And in DOT and the Maine Turnpike Authority, as well as the town, review all of our studies, review in depth. It took 3 years. We expected it to take 1, but that, be that as it may, all those agencies kind of look at our traffic study and they understand where improvements are already being addressed. And so we didn't have to make improvements in certain locations that future improvements will make. And instead, they had us kind of double down or make additional improvements in other locations that aren't being addressed. So in North Scarborough, that's an area, you know, the overlap that gets crushed by commuter traffic. It's not really Scarborough traffic, you know, it's traffic passing through Scarborough. We're making significant improvements in that area to the traffic signals, to optimize the signals, to improve the flow of traffic through there, do some widening, but not to solve it for the next 30 years, because that area is going to get relief from some of the things you said, Kevin. We're doing the right things that can kind of stand the test of time in that location around signals and safety improvements and shorter term capacity because there's a bigger picture, for example.
I asked that because I kind of figured that it had been taken into account. Because it's easy to say traffic, and returning to Massachusetts, because in fact, it will take a load off the Scarborough roads if we have a Gorham connector and improvements to our south. And also the location of the downs itself between Route 1 and the Turnpike just kind of lends itself to reduce traffic, you know,
right,
on the outer parts of town.
And to follow up just on the traffic piece, the overall project is really designed, the access points are designed to really optimize exit 42. So Market Street, the new road that's going to be under construction, is as close to the interchange as we could put it and get an approval, you know, to have the right distances from other driveways so that it's very accessible from exit 42. It's very accessible from Payne Road so that we're not pushing people down to Route 1 or other roads so people can use the exit and be on and off. The same is true for the Payne Road entrance. You know, that's been a long-standing entrance point, but it's as close as we can get to exit 42 as well, because between that intersection and exit 42 is wetlands, at least within the Downs project. So we looked at those things really closely so that we're really focusing traffic to the highway and the busy corridors and as away from Oak Hill and away from Route 1 as we can. Yeah. Yeah, we're still talking to Edge, and they're still very excited about the project and excited about being within Scarborough. They're just waiting on the community center, you know, whether that's something the town wants to move forward with, because their program changes based on the program of the community center, particularly around kind of a pool and gym space. So the Edge folks and Todd Souza that Community Services are in pretty close contact, you know, and obviously Todd doesn't know yet, you know, details on a community center and whether it'll proceed, but I know there's money in the budget to potentially study it this year by the town. And so they're in close contact so that Edge, you know, knows how to proceed when the time is right. So it's really at this point a waiting game. So in terms of Edge and what they would have in their facility?
Yes, and
Yeah. So the question, I haven't been asking the question. Sorry, Diana. The question is that you've seen some plans that show the pool and hockey is within separate spaces. Yeah. So based on the town's recent survey for a community center, sounded like a lot of support, for a community center, but particularly a pool. And so Edge would otherwise be interested in a pool, but it would potentially be a different kind of pool. So Edge is funded by clubs and organizations that would probably want a competition pool, to have larger competitions, lap swim. They likely wouldn't have like a splash pool or a kids lesson pool that's a warmer pool. So that's really kind of the chicken or the egg around Edge and a pool. But there's market for a pool, and they would have interest in a pool for those competition reasons. That would work for the high school potentially, within Edge, but it wouldn't work for a community center because that's a different vision for the pool potentially. In terms of the hockey, there is demand for hockey, both for clubs, men's leagues, women's leagues, that type of thing, but also for a home for the high school. And that's something that, again, Edge is interested in doing. It could be in the same building, but it's waiting on kind of decisions around the community center. They'd also be interested in an outdoor turf field. That could be more kind of club soccer, club lacrosse, those types of outdoor sports.
Reference to his question, because there is, for the efficiency and environment purposes, there are designs to put the pools and hockey rinks together and use the heat generated for one. So
Yeah. And that would be their vision if they proceed with both, for sure. Sir. It certainly could be. That's really, if the question is performance space, music and arts within the community center. Yeah, and our vision in the town center is to provide a site for a community center, and then enable the town to kind of proceed. So, and I didn't explain this in detail, but based on what we're hearing, a 3 to 3.5 acre site would work, and that's where how it's built into the town center plan. So what's within that building is totally up to the community. Sounds like a great idea. Art? Okay, Diana, do you want to wrap up for us?
You're up there, just go for it.
All right. Well, no, I just really want to thank everybody for coming out tonight on a Tuesday night. Thank Jamie for hosting and showing off his cool car club, and a great addition to Scarborough and the Downs in the Innovation District. And we just wanted this opportunity to kind of get into details, walk you through the plan, have Brian explain all the details and the background on how we came to this design, and encourage you to kind of get involved. We're working hard on the project overall and want to see it be successful and continue. So I encourage you to participate in any upcoming meetings and, voice your support for elements of this plan, and also ask us questions. Or if you have concerns that you don't want to ask now, concerns, comments, good ideas, head scratchers, just let us know. Like, send us an email, give me a call. Ashley's going to provide a platform for you to ask questions in the future, and we will do our best to answer those questions so you have a great understanding of what the project's all about and how it can proceed. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Thank you. Thanks.